Let's talk about the criminal justice system. Let's talk about who's really in jeopardy. Let's talk about who's being threatened more by another race in this country. Are African Americans the ones who are in jeopardy the way they're screaming outside of that courtroom that we don't have anything to do when they come for us? When they come for us, and I don't want to replay much of this, but when they come for us, if we walk away, we lose, and if we fight back, we lose, as if this was a self-defense case for real. Anyway, I heard all of that, and I said I'm going to go to the source because nobody knows the stats with respect to white crime, black crime, Latino crime, et cetera, quite like John R. Lott does. Dr. Lott is the founder and the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Again, he does this like nobody else does. So I want to go ahead and bring the interview forth here. I interviewed, again, Dr. Lott last night so that he wouldn't have to get up early this morning. And this was a very important conversation. It's about 40 minutes, and I want you to watch every single bit of it. And we'll get into the chat a little bit. A sentence of 5 to 99. Let's back that up at the beginning. All right. So, John, obviously, you know why you're here. We're here. So we're going to get into this conversation now. John, I'm just going to throw this up on the screen because why not? Let's see the words in print here. Carmelo Anthony was found guilty a little bit earlier today. And I just deleted that. Sorry. Yeah, Carmelo Anthony was found guilty and sentenced on the same day by a jury, which is unusual to my knowledge. You perhaps, Dr. John R. Lott Jr., know more about that. Sentencing is usually the purview of the judge. You know, the guilt or innocence is the job of the jury, but the jury got to go back and deliberate a sentence of 5 to 99 years for Carmelo Anthony after he stabbed Austin Metcalf to death. Right. They came back with the number on the low end, to say the least, 35. And that's if he served them all. He's eligible for parole in half of that time, so 17 and a half years, which means he could be out stabbing people again by the time he's 40, John. First, before we get into the statistics that I brought you in to talk about, give me your thoughts on that verdict from what you were able to cover of that case in Frisco, Texas, and that sentence, John.
Well, I mean, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was going to be found guilty. The defense really didn't even put on a defense. They had one witness, as I understand, and even he really didn't help them very much. But if you're going to put on a case involving self-defense, you're going to have to put the defendant up on the stand so he can go and say, you know, what was in his mind when the event happened. And they didn't do that. So they couldn't even really raise a self-defense argument. Instead, I guess they were bringing up something that basically the victim basically was responsible for acting in such a way as he stabbed himself or something crazy like that. So, and
it's a really important point. The first point you just made, John, and I want to follow up on and see if you can, because again, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer or a lawyer of any kind, and I'm not even trying to play one here on a podcast, but I'm reasonable and sensible and know enough about the law to know that if you're claiming you were defending yourself, you're claiming what you did was a righteous action because you feared for your life or feared for significant bodily harm. That's what self-defense means. You kind of have to go up and tell the jury what you were afraid of, right? What you feared, what was going to happen to you when this track athlete who, you know, after being told 15 times, according to multiple witnesses, to leave the tent, it's not your space. And when this track athlete comes over and gives you a slight shove to make you leave, which you dared him to do, touch me and see what happens. Okay, tell us how you were in fear for your life, so much so that you had to reach in and get a lethal weapon, which for some reason you had on your person or in your bag to defend yourself. If you're going to call self-defense and you don't present a case that says, here's what I was defending myself against, it's kind of hard to get a jury to believe that, right?
Right. Look, there are many issues with regard to a self-defense claim. You can't initiate the conflict, and it seems pretty clear that this individual who committed the murder initiated the conflict. And then even if the other person initiated it, you're only allowed to use force that's proportional to what you're facing there. You can only use it if you can only use deadly force if you're in real risk of death or serious injury yourself. And somebody pushing you, with just their hands and no weapons, is a long ways from saying that the person would normally believe that they were at serious risk of death or serious injury. And so, my guess is they just realized that they weren't going to be able to make the case, really, that putting this murderer on the stand, he would just be ripped apart by the prosecution. And so they didn't even put him on the stand. But it's really telling that they couldn't put him on the stand because, as you say, he couldn't answer those questions. What was in his mind? What did he fear? So, as I say, it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be found guilty unless you had somebody who snuck on the jury who just wanted to have jury nullification or something. I mean, obviously, you've had a lot of demonstrations and stuff. This has been kind of a cause celeb in the Black community, I guess.
Oh, big time.
There. And so, that was another concern I had with just the demonstrations. I mean, we've seen this in Minneapolis with the George Floyd case and others where, you probably have intimidation that's occurring of the jury pool that's there. And, I guess I was a little surprised that the judge didn't try to sequester the jurors even before this. I mean, obviously they would have been sequestered if it had taken them a while to go and come to a verdict on this. But I know the judge kind of moved the demonstrators a little ways away from the courthouse, but I suspect people could still be impacted by that. But in any case, they came back with a guilty verdict, and
what's your opinion of the sentence again? And I don't know how commonplace this is, John, and you do crime research for a living, so you maybe know of more of these kinds of things. But I don't recall at least a high-profile case in which the jury was actually tasked with deciding the sentence. Usually they do the guilt, like we said in the beginning, guilt or innocence. And if they're guilty, that it's the judge who listens to all of the victim impact testimony and all the other things and considers and makes that number. So first of all, what is your knowledge about jurors making that call? And secondly, what do you think of the 35-year decision that they gave?
Right. Well, I mean, what juries will do is they'll go and say, is he guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter? They'll have different counts that will be before them that the prosecutor has decided to charge them with. And based upon which one of those counts that they'll say, there'll be different prison term lengths that are associated with it. Juries aren't supposed to take into account normally what the length of the sentence is. They're just supposed to say, here's what makes a first-degree murder. Here's what makes a second-degree murder, and so on. And they'll just see, did the facts of the case, involve premeditation? Those will be the types of things that they'll decide to know which one to pigeonhole it in. And based on that, there's certain ranges of penalties that will be there. Based on that. And then the judge, as you say, if they say first degree murder and, it's 25 years to life, the judge then within that range will pick what the sentence will be.
Yeah, the language of the reporting that I heard as this was covered today was they were using the language sudden passion. The reporting said that, this is a Fox News reporter, that the jury was going to have to decide if sudden passion was in play here. In other words, it almost makes, or not. Sudden passion, they said, the maximum he could get would be 20 years. If there was no sudden passion, then he could get anywhere between the 5 and 99 years. And it's weird to me because I hear sudden passion. It almost makes it sound like an impulse killing, which would almost be manslaughter as opposed to murder. And the judge gave the jury in the guilt phase of the trial the choice between murder and manslaughter. They chose murder. So why is what I deem to be, kind of synonymous with manslaughter, sudden passion, being considered in the sentencing phase?
Right. Well, I mean, that's basically the difference between murder and manslaughter, whether, first degree murder is premeditated. It's passion, you walk in on your wife having an affair with somebody and you go nuts and you kill the guy at that time. That would be considered sudden passion. I assume in this case, given how long kind of the back and forth went on between the murderer and his victim there, that, as you say, given 15 requests to leave the area and his back and forth there, they probably said to themselves, this wasn't sudden passion. This is something that, occurred over a substantial enough period of time that there was forethought involved in what he was doing. He could have backed down at any point there, or it could have ended, but it didn't. So, I can't get into the jury's minds. I'm sure.
No, I understand. I'm more interested in the process and how they're allowed to consider basically manslaughter in the sentencing phase when they were given that option in the guilt phase, and they said no, it wasn't manslaughter. It was premeditated insofar as he brought a knife to a track meet and kept his hand in that bag where his knife was as he goaded somebody to dare, to put him out of touch me and see what happens. So they said it wasn't sudden passion, it was happening. So why that was even a part of the sentencing phase?
Well, because I assume that was part of, I didn't listen to the whole trial, but I assume, or even much of the trial, I just got the media accounts from, but I assume that's the defense at some point at least raised that as a possibility that was going on there. And so that was something that, the prosecution likely gave the jury the choice between murder and manslaughter. Sometimes prosecutors do that to make sure that they get the guy convicted on something. Okay. Now there's risks to that, because if you give lesser charges there, even though you think that the person should be convicted of the most serious charge, you may get compromises in the jury that move it down to the lower charge. And if you hadn't done that, they said, well, we got to convict him of something, so we'll convict him of murder. And so that's, those are all calculated decisions that the prosecution makes in terms of what they're going to charge him with.
Right. All right, Dr. John R. Lott Jr., I want the primary reason I reached out to you to talk about this is because of some of the great research you've done, statistical research on crime, and by all kinds of different metrics and demographics: crime by race, by age, by type, by weapon, et cetera, et cetera. And I knew you had some numbers involving intra and interracial crime and the statistics. In other words, white people killing white people, black people killing black, Hispanic, et cetera. And then interracial is when one race kills another. And you've done a lot of work on that, and I want to ask you about it. And the reason I brought you on to do this, John, is because of some of this. I'm going to share this real quick. I'm going to scroll just for a little while for you and for the audience, as I did for myself earlier, as some of this was happening. I was looking at and for the reactions of some of the crowds of black activists and left-wing activists, not all of them black, but overwhelmingly. A lot of them were the angry white female liberals, the awfuls, as they're sometimes referred to. But this is the kind of stuff that we saw and heard. This is Dominique Alexander. He is the head of the National Something Action Network. Basically, he's been representing the Anthony family from the beginning in all of this, and he declared that Black lives don't matter in Collin County, Texas, because they allowed a black murderer who stabbed an unarmed 17-year-old to death to be convicted, and that apparently means Black lives don't matter. I want you to watch this for a moment.
I speak on behalf of myself, Minister Dominic Alexander. I speak on behalf of myself as president of the Next Generation Action Network.
I don't hear
The
anything.
Next Generation Action Network wanted to respect this process, to be able to make sure that nobody said that the Next Generation Action Network obstructed this process, interfered in this process. But what this process did is showing that Black lives do not matter in Collin County. It showed us that time and time in American history, it has shown us to remove emotions from yet the law.
So he says that Black lives don't matter in Collin County. And John, I just found that interesting, and maybe you did too, because the only life that was lost here that didn't matter was the white life of Austin Metcalf. Right. Carmelo Anthony's life wasn't taken by somebody stabbing him in the chest because he went into, their private, track team tent area and then goaded somebody to do something to him. To my knowledge, the only life lost here was a white life, right?
Right. Well, I mean, Blacks commit over half the murders in the United States, about 55% or so, even though they make up, about 13% of the population. So they're way overrepresented in terms of the murders. Now, the thing is, Blacks are overwhelmingly killing other Blacks. 90% of Blacks are murdered by other Blacks. And so, if you want to go and save Black lives, you're going to have to reduce the murders being committed by Blacks out there, overwhelmingly.
That was brought up outside the courtroom, John. That was brought up by a number of people who were arguing with the activists who were out there saying that Carmelo Anthony was mistreated and Black lives don't matter and so forth. And they pointed out, and a number of them were screaming, white people kill white people too, and Black people kill Black people, and Hispanics kill Hispanics. That is nothing. We're not playing that. That's not what this is about. They're trying to dismiss those realities as being irrelevant to this situation, because, and I guess this is again the core of the reason I wanted you to come on, is to talk about when it's not Black on Black and white on white, when it is interracial and one race is killing the other. These are the stats that I know that you have, and that's what I want you to share as they make this argument somehow that Black people are being mistreated when it comes to the criminal justice system and interracial crime.
Right. Well, I mean, you can look at violent crime overall. There's data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Basically, Blacks commit violent crimes against whites at 9 times the rate that whites commit violent crimes against Blacks. Blacks commit violent crimes against Hispanics at about 2.5 times the rate that Hispanics commit violent crimes against Blacks. And Blacks commit violent crimes against Asians at about 89 times the rate that Asians commit violent crimes against Blacks.
That's an extraordinary number. And when all of those numbers, actually, each of the metrics that you talked about there, Black on white, Black on Hispanic, Black on Asian, and the reverse. And these numbers come from where, John? From anybody who's listening right now. I want them to know, first of all, about your website, crimeresearch.org, which is the hub of all of your tremendously meticulous accounting of things by way of the research that you do. But can you give us just at least a little bit of sourcing for anybody who's
sure? No, it comes from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which is part of the United States Department of Justice. They have report their national crime victimization data, and I have links to their sources on the website, on our website.
This one right here, right? If everybody can see that, this blue link right here. Let me click that real quick and just kind of show people what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that's data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. That's their report that they put out.
And so this is a report from 2018. And I don't know how far back the years go for these things, but I'm trying to anticipate every reaction to this, John, that we might get from the left and people who don't want to hear these things. And one of the things that I think they'll say is, well, that's Trump's Department of Justice. What we're talking about crosses over many years, many administrations, and so forth, and many attorneys general and departments of justice. Correct?
Right. I mean, the national crime victimization data has been done for 53 years now, and it's pretty much.
And the statistics we're talking about right now go back decades. This isn't like a new phenomenon.
Right. I mean, they don't break it down by race, different what racial group is committing crimes against another race every year, but they've broken it down before. And you pretty much get the same types of data. And you get that also when you look at murders, for example. You have, such as violent, and that comes out every year. And so you could pick any year for the last, that comes from the FBI crime data, and that goes back to the 70s.
This is one of your reports, John, from 2023, and this is the intra-racial crime percentages of people who kill people who are just like themselves. Again, black on black,
Right.
white on white, and Hispanic on Hispanic, and so forth. And that's pretty common because people generally commit crimes in the neighborhood in which they live, and overwhelmingly, people live in neighborhoods with people who are largely like them, right?
Right. No, that's very true. So, one of the ironies is you see so much of the discussion is people care about the race of the criminal, and I can understand that. But if you're trying to be easy on black criminals, the people that are going to be harmed are going to be black victims. If you try to be easy on Hispanic criminals, you're going to be relatively hard than on Hispanic victims. People commit crimes in their neighborhoods overwhelmingly. So they have people who have similar race and socioeconomic backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. What does it say, John, about when you look at some of these stats? I'm looking again. This is another, a graph that you have here, and this chart shows the percentage of whites murdered by blacks and blacks murdered by whites from the years 2019 and 2020. And what does it say when you consider the populations? Because it's roughly a 70% white country. It's roughly 13% of the country is African American, and then Hispanics and Asian and so on and so forth fill out the rest. So it's 70% of the population is white, and if only 13% of the population is African American, what does that mean when you see numbers like this in the interracial crime stats?
Well, I mean, it means that blacks are unfortunately dramatically committing crimes against other groups at a rate that's very disproportionate to their share of the population. And so you want to try to adjust for that. I mean, if it depends what question you're asking, but if you're asking,
well, I guess the reason I'm asking the question, John, is I want to get an understanding and to give an answer to those who are outside that courthouse, for example, screaming that this criminal justice system is being unfair to blacks. They're
Right.
putting more blacks like Carmelo Anthony in prison, and they're doing it on racist basis. In fact, there were no black jurors in this case, and they see that as an example of the system being harder on blacks than they are on whites.
Right. Well, again, we get back to what I was trying to say before, and that is, if overwhelmingly, not obviously this is an exception in this case, but overwhelmingly, people commit murders against others who are the same race as the murderer, and so if you don't want to punish black murderers, you're going to get a lot more blacks being murdered. I mean, that's just the simple point there. And so the question becomes, do you care about the murderer or do you care about the victims? And if I care about blacks or Hispanics or even illegal aliens, because I think they're disproportionately have crimes committed against them by other illegals, I think one should at least think about trying to protect the victims there, and realize that being lenient on the criminals means you're going to have more of the victims who are similar to the very people that you claim that you care about.
I think that's fairly stated. John, I want to go back here now and share another video from one of the individuals outside protesting the guilty verdict and ultimately the sentence, which was very lenient When you think about it, could have been 99 years, it's 35. And again, 17 and a half for parole. If things go well for him, he'll be out before he's 40. But this is one of the activists who is really, really angry. And I'd like everybody to listen to what she has to say. And then I'd like you to get your response to it here, John.
Why do we have to care anymore? Why are we even here?
I can't hear her,
Why are we here? What are we here for?
Oh, you're not able to hear her, John?
No, but you can tell me what she said.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to let it play though, so everybody else can.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Yeah, it might be just an earphone thing or something. But here we go.
Why do we have to care anymore? Why are we even here? To be honest, why are we here? What are we here for? Because if we take up for ourselves, we go to jail. If we don't, we die. So it's a catch-22 in this situation. What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for it. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more. You can't walk away no more.
Rest in peace, Trayvon Martin. Let me ask you this right now.
So what she said largely there, John, was that we're damned if we do. She's talking about she and her people as blacks in America. We're damned if we do and damned if we don't. We can't take up for ourselves. If we do, we get thrown in jail. And if we don't, we die. And then she said, I have 5 boys. What do I tell them now? What do I tell them that they're supposed to do? You can't walk away anymore. And I'm looking at the specifics of this case, and it is literally the opposite of that. If he had walked away when he was told to get out of the tent, we're not here right now. He didn't choose to walk away. But what do you, and again, they're framing this as somehow, some way, the systemic racism of America is leading to the black population having to make choices, in her words, that are impossible for them to choose. What should she tell her 5 sons, she says?
Right. Well, look, I mean, I think it's important that people be able to go and defend themselves. But I think you have to understand what the law is, and that you can only use force that's proportionate to the risk that you're facing. You can't initiate a problem, okay? That's one thing, and he obviously didn't obey that part of the law. But you know, if a reasonable person would view you as facing serious risk of injury or death, you know, you're allowed to use, considerable force to go and protect yourself. But having somebody push you, unless they were trying to push you in front of a subway or something like that, is a lot different than somebody actually facing serious injury or death. And so I would tell her boys to be thoughtful about these types of things, and not to act in the heat of the moment there, and count to 5, okay, before they do something. But I mean, I'll be the first to defend somebody using, defensive actions to protect themselves or others. And I think people should be able to do that. And I think there's blacks in particular, given that they are victims of violent crime at such high rates, particularly poor blacks who live in high crime urban areas. I think it's important that blacks be able to go and defend themselves. We recently put out a survey for concealed carry permit holders and people who are carrying in the United States. And what we found is that blacks, if you're looking at people who carry concealed all or almost all the time, they are disproportionately carrying compared to their share of general election voters. They make up about 11% of general election voters, but they make up over 15% of those who are carrying all or most of the time. And I think that's great news. I think because they're the ones who are very likely to be victims of crime. For Hispanics, it's even more lopsided. They also make up about 11% of general election voters, but they make up over 18% of those who carry all or most of the time. And so, but what you find is that the type of person who goes through the process to get a concealed carry permit, they're very law-abiding. You don't shoot somebody just because they're upset with you or something like that. You have to really be in serious risk of injury or death. And so that's what I would tell her. I would just say, look, understand the law, know your rights. It's important that your boys be able to go and protect themselves, but tell them to think twice before they do these things, and for them to understand what rights they have.
You're much more eloquent, excuse me, much more eloquent than I am, because my answer would be tell them not to stab people without cause, because that's what happened here. Carmelo Anthony brought a knife to a track meet and intended to use it. Don't know against whom, but he went into that tent and intentionally goaded somebody into acting to get him out of there and saying, I'm not leaving. 15 requests to get out and not doing it. And with a hand on a knife, according to multiple witnesses, his hand never left that bag, and they could see the veins in his forearm bulging because he was gripping something. And then as soon as somebody came up to him to actually get him to leave, which he dared them to do, he pulled it out and committed the stab. Tell your boys, don't do that. It would be my much more simplistic response. Don't do that. That's what you tell your sons. But that's
right. Well, I just wanted to be able to also tell her what they can do. But
yeah.
So anyway, because her point, as I understood it, was just that, what can her boys do? And so they have certain rights, but there are limits on what they can do.
So John, back to the core here, which is again why I wanted to bring you on. And all of this work is available on the website. Let me share this real quick. This is Dr. John Arlott Jr.'s official website. It's Crime Prevention Research Center's website. It's crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org, and that's where you'll be able to find, statistics like John brought out here. This is the reason I brought him on, was specifically to talk about this. The number of people within the same race who kill themselves, or the percentages rather. And then when you get to the interracial crime, the reality is it is a very, very dangerous place to be in this country when you're talking about interracial crime, not for Black people, but for white people. For them to commit, them being the Black population, to commit over 9 times more murders of white people when they are only 13% of the population. And John, you probably break this down even further, or the FBI crime statistics do, and I'm sure you could pull these. The overwhelming majority of that 13% that are doing it is a small majority or small minority, right? We're talking about, Black males, aged what to what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you only have a few percent of the population is committing the vast majority of the crimes that are there. Even among criminals, you may have 5% of the criminals committing the vast majority of the crimes that are there. And so, it's a very small group of people. And that's one reason why, those are the types of people you want to make sure get locked up, so that they're not going and harming other Blacks or other Hispanics.
Right. And that's extremely important for people to know too. Again, when we talk about that stat that everybody knows about 13% of the population committing more than 50% of the homicides, it's really only, a tiny percentage of that 13%. It's male, and it's, between the ages of, 14 and 25 or whatever that number is. Carmelo Anthony fits right in the middle of that. And John, the last thing I want to ask you about this is the racist aspect, or the racial allegations, because again, radicals on the left who don't seem to want any accountability for anybody that's in the quote unquote racial minority, and only have concerns about crimes when they're created by or committed by the racial majority. They will say that everything you and I are talking about now is racist. They will say that, saying that Carmelo Anthony's verdict was a just verdict is racist. Ben Shapiro, I think, gets credit for coining the phrase, facts don't care about your feelings. You're not dealing in feelings here, and you're not picking on a race when you do facts, when you pull statistics, all of the federal statistics, right? For the research you do, it's not about feelings, and it's not about intent to demonize a race or anything of that nature. It's just, here's what the numbers show. They bear something out, and you can recognize patterns or you cannot, but it's facts, not feelings. Is that fair to say?
I hope so. I hope that's what I'm trying to do. So, you got to understand what the data is if you're going to try to save lives.
That's right. And that's ultimately what this is about too. Save lives. Teaching you spend a good deal of time on our conversation here talking about what that woman should tell her kids, her black sons. And it's about how to protect themselves as well. And the protection isn't going to be coming from white people as the statistics bear out. The protection is going to have to be against other people who look like them in their communities over 90% of the time. That's, just the way that this works. So you want to save lives, recognize where the threats are. And if you're black, the threat is going to come from people who look like you. If you're white, the biggest threat is going to come from people who look like you. And if you don't know the statistics when it comes to the interracial crime as well, then you won't be prepared to protect yourself, which is, again, as you point out, it's all about saving lives. That's the reason you do the research you do, right?
Yeah, well, that's what motivated me to get involved with this, to try to figure out what we could do to save lives. And that's the bottom line.
John, last thing I want to ask you, and this has nothing to do with this case, but it's just that since I've got you on the line, I want to ask you about another piece that you have out. You're constantly putting tremendous work out there in a variety of different publications, and you did one just last week for Real Clear Investigations about violent crime dropping when more people are armed. When people carry weapons, violent crime goes down. That flies in the face of the narrative we hear from the gun control groups who say that more guns means more deaths. Can you give me just a minute or two on that?
Sure. Well, I mean, this last year, it looks like we have the lowest murder rate ever recorded in U.S. history. They have data going back to 1900. The lowest previous murder rate was about 4.5 per 100,000. And it looks like this last year was probably maybe even slightly below 4 per 100,000. So that's 1/9 below the previous low. In 2024, it was about 5 per 100,000. So you can see how much things have gone down. And, it's at the same time, you see a huge increase in the number of people who are carrying. We've collected data on the number of concealed carry permits for about 15 years or so. But what we find is that over the last few years, there's been a huge explosion in constitutional carry states, such as Ohio, where you live, where it's no longer necessary for people to have a permit. And the number of permits are falling in those constitutional carry states. But at the same time, we know more people are carrying. In order to try to get a handle on how much more people are carrying at the same time that the number of permits are falling, we've been doing a survey. And the last survey we did was about a year and a half ago. And in the interim, it looks like there was about a 5 percentage point increase in the rate that adults in the United States who are general election voters are carrying. You have almost 30% of adults in the United States say that they carry at least once in a while. There's big differences between the 29 constitutional carry states and the rest of the country. But there's lots of interesting breakdowns. I mentioned before, Blacks and Hispanics are carrying at relatively high rates compared to their share of general election voters. Even though Democrats as a whole are kind of underrepresented, we have it broken down this time by kind of the political views of people. Like, are you very liberal, moderate, conservative, or very conservative? And what we found is that the group among those political views that actually is most likely to carry all or most of the time are actually people who are very liberal. Very conservatives are the second most, and then kind of people more in the middle are the least likely to go and carry all or most of the time. I found that interesting. And anyway, there's a number of different things. Women, if you look at those who carry all or most of the time, are pretty close to men in terms of the rate that they carry. And I think all this is great in the sense that if my research convinces me of anything, there are basically a couple groups in the country who benefit the most. The people who are the most likely victims of violent crime, that overwhelmingly tends to be poor Blacks who live in high crime urban areas, and people who are relatively weaker physically, like women and the elderly. And so the fact that you're seeing those groups in particular are carrying more, and that's particularly true for the constitutional carry states. Women carry at relatively higher rates there. And that's kind of understandable. I mean, one of the benefits of constitutional carry compared to having to go and get a permit is if a woman's being stalked or threatened, it could take, depending on the state, it could take 60 or 90 days. I mean, a fast state may be 45 days. There are some places like parts of Connecticut or Los Angeles where it can take over a year to get your permit. And, she may not be able to wait that long. She may not be able to wait, 45 days, let alone 60 or 90 or a year. She may need to get protection right away. And constitutional carry allows her to do that. And may be one of the reasons why you see women in constitutional carry states carrying at relatively higher rates.
John, phenomenal research. I encourage people to read that. Real Clear Investigations. They get that where? Is that going to be?
Well, they can get it on our website at crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org.
Got it. That's the most important thing there. John, thank you for bringing the stats and bringing, again, no matter how many feelings they hurt, that's not the intention. The intention is to educate and inform people, and these stats are extraordinarily important.
It's just lives. So anyway, thank you very much for your time.
You got it, John. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you very much. All right, there you go. That's John R. Lott Jr., and he has done some extraordinary work, obviously, in this field. And it was really unfortunate that he couldn't hear the one video that I was trying to play, because I was going to play another one for him that I think you'll be able to hear, and maybe we'll do that another time, I guess. But again, it's just this constant drumbeat of, we're oppressed, we're oppressed, we're oppressed, we're oppressed. And white people oppress us, white people oppress us. This is just the narrative. And it's all being brought back out because somebody in the Black community committed a completely horrific and unnecessary cold-blooded murder of somebody in the white community. And yet we're oppressed because somebody got held accountable for it. To a small degree, 35 years for somebody who's 19 now and can get out in 17 and a half years. So somebody 36, 37 years old, think there's a lot of life left? Yeah. How much life does Austin Metcalf have left after 17 and a half years from now? Oh, that's right. None. His life was taken forever from his family, from his loved ones, from himself. So it's a very frustrating thing. And like I said, I don't care if people are going to listen to statistics, which is what we're doing here and what we're talking about. Listening to and understanding statistics, the realities, and still claim that it's racist to talk about it. It's racist for me. It's racist for John Lott to write about it. He's written books about it. He's written articles about it. Is it racist really to say those things? Or is it a you problem? Because you don't want to have to admit, you know what, and I'm understanding. I don't care what your ethnicity is, what demographic you belong to. Maybe it's men versus women. Whatever it is, nobody likes to be categorized as saying you're part of a group that does bad stuff. Because then it makes you feel like, well, you're saying I must be going to do bad stuff too. I get that. I do. I feel bad for people who get lumped in with other people simply because they share a trait with another group. I really do. But I can't let that sadness and that, boy, that's too bad, affect the reality, the statistical, factual reality about what is dangerous and what isn't, and what needs to be done to protect people, which is what John is talking about. So yeah, it must hurt. If you're in the Black community, it probably hurts to know that 13% and really about 6% of the entire population commit more than half the murders in the country. That's got to suck to hear that, because then it makes you feel like you're a target too, or you're going to be blamed for that too. I don't envy that. And I don't, envy is probably the wrong word. I don't discount your feelings in that regard. I don't. But your feelings don't matter here. The facts are what matters. Again, going back to give Ben Shapiro credit.